In the sign world, you often hear, how do I know that I'm comparing apples to apples on a product? And there's very few times that we get the opportunity to show you what that really means. Because when you're building a sign, you can build it using hundreds of different products. You can use square tubing, you can use angles, you can use different thickness of the sheets to cover it up, you can use different modules and lights. There's hundreds of different ways that you can build it. And that's what can make a standard sign or a top tier sign. So with that being said, I'm really excited to show you guys Shops at Deerbrook.
How do you approach building a sign that has already failed?
So that part was really interesting, right? Because we had to figure out, how do we build this sign in a way that doesn't fail, right? Because the previous sign had already failed and it had got permitted, it had gotten engineered, it had gotten inspected, it had done everything that was correct. So the first thing that we had to do was figure out, like, why did this sign fail? What happened? What went wrong? Was it failure of just like the manufacturing process? Was it failure of the installation process? Was it failure of just, I don't know what happened. So we went out there and we saw they had just welded some small little angles onto this flagpole, and the cabinet just sat on those angles, and that was it. And like for something that big, you need some sort of horizontal support. So eventually the storm came and it did too much of that, and the whole thing just came off. So the pole was still fine, but the whole cabinet just came right off. So the first thing that came to mind, we're like, okay, cool. Well, we need to add some horizontal support. We need to open up that pipe, and we need to put some steel pipes that are gonna be going horizontally into it. That was my initial judgment. So what did I do? Reached out to my engineer, called him, and I said, hey, look, this is what we have. This is the grade of the pole. This is the thickness of the pole. What I suggest, what do you think? And then, because we have to maintain the same design, we have to maintain everything. We came up with a couple of ideas of what would work, and we presented that to the customer. The customer was happy, they approved it, they liked it, and then we proceeded with the standard procedure of building a sign.
What is the process of fabricating a project like this?
Well, the process is quite extensive if you want to do it correctly, right? So as I kind of was mentioning a little bit earlier about the engineering process, you have to make sure that whatever you're building is engineered correctly. And a lot of times, whenever you're building a sign, the city's only going to require that you get engineering for the actual steel pole, right? So they're only going to ask you, how deep is that steel pole going? What's the thickness of it? How high is it going to be? And they'll want details of the transition plates. Everything else, they're just gonna ask for structural drawings from the sign manufacturer, right? So we have to provide structural drawings of the cabinet, showing where it's gonna get welded, what thickness of aluminum we're using, how it's gonna get built, but none of that stuff actually has to get engineered. So what we decided to do on this particular project, because it already failed, was that we wanted to get the actual cabinet engineered, not just the steel pole. And then we had to figure out, okay, like, how are we gonna manufacture this, right? Are we gonna do it in different sections, in different segments? Are we gonna do the pole cover separately? Are we gonna have it be welded onto the pole covers? Are gonna be bolted on? And once all that stuff got figured out with the engineer and the design got approved, then that's when we started the permitting process. The permitting process was relatively smooth since this was already an existing sign. So it was more of just like resubmitting the paperwork, resubmitting the new engineering, and the permit got approved relatively quickly. So the fabrication process of something like this is going to be quite extensive, because once you have everything laid out, you know how you're going to build it. Now you got to build it. Now's the fun part, right? So now that you have to build it, you have to set everything up and dry fit it here and make sure that everything lines up, because what we decided to do was that we were going to build the pole cover out of 1.5 inch square tubing, and then we were going to also build the cabinet out of 2 inch square tubing, and then we were going to bolt it together with some 1/2 inch bolts. They were going to be grade 8 bolts, and we had the nuts welded onto the existing square tubing. So we had to dry fit everything here to make sure that it's all going to get bolted up correctly. So we took it out to the parking lot, we opened everything up, we put all the cabinets together, we put all the pole cover together. Once we got all that part figured out, the paint came out absolutely beautiful. We decided to go with this black C instead of just the standard black, so it can have just like a little bit of a muted color to it. Once the assembly part started, that's where we started putting all the channel letters onto the cabinet. That's where we started putting all the light modules on the inside. So then it begs the question, like, how are we going to transport this sign? And that part was really interesting because it was a lot of different components. Like, we have a big trailer. We have to make sure that, like, when we're going to transport this, like the painted side, is it going to be facing down? Is it going to be facing up? What parts are we going to take first? What parts are going to get installed first? Pole cover, the cabinets, the steel. So it was quite interesting. This project was quite fun for that. It really kept us on our toes. But the transportation of the sign was also a big part of this.
How long does an installation like this take?
The installation, depending on if we're doing everything from like beginning, right? So like if I'm setting the steel and I'm doing the whole And then we're doing everything you can expect for, it's gonna be probably like 1 day for us to set the steel, for us to auger the hole, set the steel, do the concrete, and then you need about 2 days for it to fully cure. And then we can come back and we can start doing everything else. For us, we already had the steel pole, but we had to do the spread foundation, right? So it was essentially very similar. So we did the spread foundation, we let it cure for about 2 days. After that, we came back and we started doing the pole cover, right? So we did the pole cover. We then encountered the issue that once we set the steel, we were gonna be too close to the power lines for us to install the cabinet. So we had to take the steel back to the shop. We installed it into the existing cabinet here. And then the next day we went back to finish everything up. So the next day we went back, we installed all the cabinets, the steel, did all of our welding. And then the third day was where we do all of our punch reviews, right? So we make sure that we didn't miss any details. We make sure that there was any dings or scratches, that those get touched up and those get fixed. We make sure that if there's any lighting issue, that gets addressed. If there's any vinyl that needs to be fixed, if there's any silicone that needs to be added, this is where I want to do that final punch list before the customer does. So this is where we make sure that everything is perfect, Windex clean, that it is shiny clean before we hand it over to the customer. So something like this, I would say that give about 2 days for you to set the pole, and then give about 2 days to do the actual installation, and then give maybe just that third day. So all in all, about 5 days total.
What values drive the company's approach to large-scale projects like this?
I think that, when we started the company, which is why I'm excited to make this video, is, I've been doing signs for a small portion of my life for the last maybe 10 years, or a medium portion of my life. I think that a lot of the work that we do sometimes gets undervalued because it doesn't get seen. Like, it gets seen from the outside, but you don't really get to see how the sign gets built. You don't really get to see the difference in quality unless there's a big failure like this. So when we say that you're getting a Signs by G product, is that you're getting something that I would put my name on it, that anybody here would put their name on it, because they made it, they stand behind it, they're proud of it. Like, the values that drive us to do something like this is just we want to be better, we want to be excellent, we want to be, we want to crush it. We want somebody to look at that sign and be like, damn, like, they built that sign and they did it correctly, and that's why it's up there. The core value is excellence as a habit, but it comes from the saying that says, we are what we repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. And making this sign, we wanted to show you guys that. We wanted to show you guys that what we do is excellence in everything, and this was a really good opportunity to show you the difference.